weakens you. So whenever the Spirit moves you, deep breath. And we are right here.
This image was taken at Temple Emmanuel, which is about 10 minutes from my house in Arizona. A couple of kids took this menorah made out of PVC pipe from the front yard of the temple, bent it into a swastika, and put it in their friend's front yard. When their friend's mother came out in the morning, they just found a menorah put back together. So how did they know that this had ever happened? It's because the kids who did this posted pictures of it online. Instances of anti-Semitism in America have been growing over the past few years, and its presence online has also seen a sharp rise. In this speech, I will use many articles published by the Southern Poverty Law Center, hereafter referred to as SPLC, as a legal advocacy group based out of Alabama that is considered to be legitimate by many scholarly and media sources. And to inform my audiences about the rise of anti-Semitism online and its effects on Jewish communities in the United States, I will explain how online anti-Semitism has grown and manifested into actions that have real-world effects and what they look like for American Jews. So let's start by discussing why anti-Semitism online has grown and in what ways. In the past few years, the number of hate groups have been on the rise, and they have grown more vocal, more public, and more empowered. The current political climate has been divisive, if nothing else. And according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, in 2014, as you can see here, there were 784 registered hate groups on their list, which is a 10-year low if you look to the left of the graph. Now, in 2016, there were 917, which 100 of which were white nationalist groups, 99 of which are neo-Nazi groups, 130 of which are KKK groups, and 10 of which are Holocaust denial groups. President Trump has played something of a role in this empowerment of these groups as well. After the events in Charlottesville, President Trump said he, quote, condemned hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides, end quote, but failed to specifically call out the far-right white nationalists and neo-Nazis that were present at the rally. And a good example of these people and these groups feeling more empowered since the start of Trump's presidency is this tweet from David Duke. David Duke is the former Grand Wizard of the KKK, which is to say he was the head of the entire organization. And as you can see, he's feeling pretty good about the current political situation in America. President Trump also appointed Julie Kirchner as the head of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Now, according to the SPLC, Kirchner, quote, spent nearly a decade as executive director of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR, end quote. This group espouses anti-people of color messages and white majoritarianism. Now, I would like to be clear here. I am not saying that Trump is directly responsible for these groups' actions or the how they've been feeling, but it is undeniable that since he has taken office, their presence and their confidence have been on the rise. So, instances of online anti-Semitism have increased. In a study done by Israeli security monitoring company Vigo Intelligence and the World Jewish Congress, quote, more than 382,000 anti-Semitic posts were posted on social media platforms over the course of 2016. And here are just a couple of examples. Now, someone might consider the number reasonable per se, but according to the same study, quote, "It should be noted that 90% of the discourse relating to these forms of hate speech were not posted by users that identified as overtly anti-Semitic, nor in overtly anti-Semitic communities." Now, to recap, increased online anti-Semitism has been caused by acceptance and empowerment. So now let's look at its effects on the communities. Specifically in the form of vandalisms, bomb threats, and personal attacks. First, we'll talk about the vandalisms. In February alone, 3 Jewish cemeteries were vandalized in 12 days. 200 headstones were knocked over in a cemetery in Missouri, 100 in Philadelphia, and 40 in New York. Second, I would like to mention the various waves of bomb threats made that specifically targeted Jewish community centers and Jewish day schools. Since January 4th, over 100 bomb threats have been made at these institutions. And finally, we will examine incidents of personal attacks, whether verbal or physical. In 10 days post-election, 100 personal incidents of anti-Semitism were recorded. Quote, "In Chicago, a man wearing a kippah was called a kike," end quote. And, quote, "While looking for Hanukkah decorations, a parent and her 2-year-old child in Bel Air, Maryland, were called fucking Jews by another shopper," end quote. In addition, I would like to mention the incident that happened August 11th in Charlottesville. Now, while there was a large array of attendees at this event, there was a large presence of far-right people, and the chants they chose were very overtly neo-Nazis, some including, quote, "blood and soil," end quote, which was a key idea to original Nazism, and, quote, "Jews will not replace us," which is fairly self-explanatory. Hopefully, by this point, you can all see how the rise of anti-Semitism online, fueled by a divisive political climate and lack of punishment, has led to an increase in real-world incidents that have affected Jewish communities in America.
Do we all need to just take a breath? I feel like we all just need to take a breath, at least for me.